We're back again this week with episode 340 of the AM/PM podcast. This week's guest is Ritu Java, the winner of the $1 Billion Seller Summit Speaker Prize. That's right, she was voted back in February at the virtual $1 Billion Seller Summit that I host as the best speaker by the audience. And she's going to be sharing some of those strategies that actually won her that award and a lot more in this episode. I think you're going to really find some great information, especially when it comes to marketing and PPC. Enjoy. And don't forget, it's not too late if you want to come to the next $1 Billion Seller Summit. It's happening June 11th to the 15th in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Just go to billiondollarsellersummit.com, billiondollarsellersummit.com. You can see all the speakers, see the hotel, see all the information. Hopefully you can join us there.
Welcome to the AM/PM podcast. Welcome to the AM/PM podcast, where we explore opportunities in e-commerce.
We dream big and we discover what's working right now.
Plus, this is the podcast where money never sleeps, working around the clock in the AM and the PM.
Are you ready for today's episode?
I said, are you ready? Let's do this. Here's your host, Kevin King. Kevin King.
Ritu Java, welcome to the AM/PM podcast. I'm super excited to have you joining us today.
Hey, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me. This is super exciting.
Now, I think the last time I saw you in Prosper. You were dancing the night away at a couple of the parties there at Prosper. But before that, back in February, for those of you that have been living under a rock and maybe didn't see all the posts and everything, Ritu actually was voted the best speaker at the $1 Billion Seller Summit, the virtual edition, with a pretty killer presentation. We might actually share a couple things from that later in this podcast for those of you that missed that, but it blew people's minds. Ritu, you've been doing this for a day or two. I mean, you've been in the e-commerce, you're not new to this e-commerce space. You've been doing this since 13, 14, 15 years, something like that?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for the mention on the BDSS. I was super blown away myself with the response. I'm glad this topic that I shared resonated with everyone. So yeah, a little bit about my background. I actually started, my e-commerce journey way back in 2010 when I was an Etsy seller. So I started on the Etsy platform and kind of realized pretty quickly that, just because you have a listing doesn't mean people are going to buy your stuff, So I had to kind of really teach myself marketing. I had to teach myself data. At the time I was living in Japan, so it was kind of a non-English speaking environment and stuff. So I decided I would move to the United States and do a course in data science. So I'm an engineer by background, but I wanted to go back to school and kind of get a little bit more deeper into data, and I just wanted to figure this out. I wanted to figure e-commerce out. And then, fast forward to today, I'm the CEO of PPC Ninja. We're a software and services provider in the Amazon advertising space. And I'm really pumped with, any kind of data analysis, analytics, and all the new stuff, all the great juicy data that Amazon keeps throwing at us. I love that stuff. And of late, I have been playing a lot with ChatGPT and OpenAI, and just loving all the interesting things that I'm learning on a daily basis. It's just mind-blowing how quickly this thing has exponentially kind of taken the world.
Your background is in engineering, you said. So you went to school, and you're originally from India, right?
Yes, I went to engineering school in India. I did my electronics and communication engineering way back whenever. I'm not going to say when that was, but yes, that was a very long time ago.
It couldn't have been that long ago. You're not a day past 25, so it couldn't have been that long ago.
Thank you, Kevin.
So when you started selling Etsy from Japan, were you selling stuff into the United States? Were you making handmade stuff and then shipping it from
Exactly.
Japanese type of oriented things and shipping that into other countries? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, I was doing exactly that. So the Etsy back then was only on the US side. I don't think they had other marketplaces. So at that time I was just shipping, and the shipping costs were just killer. And I was trying to figure out all these different ways of being able to send these light packages and kind of use the lightest, thinnest materials that wouldn't destroy my jewelry because it was so delicate. I couldn't use a box. I had to use like bubble wrap and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it was a challenge, and on top of that, getting the visibility, that was a challenge as well, because I would say I'm selling from Japan, and then they would say, oh, shipping costs, and all that stuff. So then I started absorbing the shipping costs, and that was not easy, not fun, not easy. Yeah.
Did you continue that when you came to the U.S. to study for a couple of years? Did you keep selling on your jewelry on Etsy, or did you just focus on the studies?
Yeah, I just dropped it completely. I just told myself this is a new start. I'm gonna figure this thing out and then come back later. I mean, I never went back to Etsy at all, but I'm more interested in Amazon than Etsy. So yeah, I mean, the Etsy store is still there, and people can see my jewelry there, but it's not an active store. So yeah, I never went back to it. I have tons and tons of inventory. As sellers, we do pick up inventory, so many beads, so many different styles, so many different jewelry, but it's just lying in a box.
So when you came and you went to school, what was it that drove you or that really appealed to you about e-commerce?
Yeah, so because it was all related to data, right? So I was really trying to understand, how marketing works, how advertising works, and I wanted to do it formally because I had kind of gone through all the courses that were out there, like there were so many people sharing their knowledge on Facebook marketing, Facebook ads, Google ads. I tried all of that, in my own way, and then I realized that I needed better tools. I needed a better way of looking into data, slicing and dicing it in different ways so that I could get the results that I wanted. And then just happened to have the opportunity to work at an Amazon selling account. And that's how I got into Amazon, so that was my lucky break, I would say. And then I just found that, the ROI is so high, the conversion rate is so high on Amazon compared to all these other channels. I just think this was perfect. I just kept getting drawn more and more into Amazon. So I'm happy here, actually.
So when you started doing the Amazon stuff, what year was that roughly? 20?
That was 2016.
2016?
Yeah.
So end of 2016. So it's changed a lot. I mean, your specialty is more on the PPC and the advertising side for Amazon sellers. It's dramatically changed. Back in 2016, it was just basic. For those of you that weren't around then, it was just simple, basic, easy. You really didn't need an agency. You didn't need someone that was a data scientist to do it. You just hit a couple buttons and there's like 3 choices and that was it. But it's evolved dramatically now. And
Yep.
now it's mind blowing for a lot of people. They just can't get their head around it. They don't like dealing with the numbers. And so they just job it out. How have you seen it drastically change in the last 7 years since you first got into it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the way you describe it is exactly how I remember it. So there was sponsored product ads back then. They didn't have ASIN targeting even. Sponsored brand ads were just getting rolled out. In fact, there was a hack that people wanted so badly just to get the sponsored brand ad placement, which was to sign up for Vendor Express. Back then, there was this backdoor way of getting SB ads. And
yeah, I remember the guys at Amazing.com did a special webinar where they charged like $147, and they had they had this special webinar, and they got like 900 people to do it or something, some crazy number like that. And that's what the whole webinar was about. Here's how to get this competitive advantage on sponsored display ads by having this account that Amazon's done away with now. They don't even have that account. And here's how to sign up for it. It was like, you're exactly right. It was like a little ninja hack.
Yep.
It was crazy.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then we noticed, the rollouts of so many different features. A sponsored display, which didn't used to exist back then, that was rolled out. And then, it got more and more complex. I think sponsored display at this point is by far the most complex ad type, with so many settings that, all of those settings, if you didn't set them right, could take you in a different direction. There's, VCPM campaigns, which can be very misleading. There's so many different things, right? So people don't always know this stuff. Like recently, I was talking to somebody on a podcast about VCPM campaigns and how they can be. They may make you look like you're doing a great job because the ACoS shows up as really, really low, but actually they're cannibalizing your other sales. Like you are already getting those sales through organic or through another ad, but because this ad type shows up on the product detail page, even it can, and also the fact that Amazon uses last touch attribution. This ad type gets attributed all the conversions that were going to happen on that page anyway. So how many people know this? In fact, barely any. I mean, I talk to agencies and they're like, no, they're fighting for this ad type because it's making them look good. It's making them look really, really good because their overall account ACOS is looking really good. But we actually uncovered, the problems with it. These were not click-based ads; they're impression-based ads, and Amazon is showing that data alongside click-based, and it just can get so misleading. And these are subtle things that you either know it or you don't, and most people have just too much other stuff to pay attention to, and this can get completely ignored, like the PPC knowledge, the PPC staying abreast of all the new changes that are happening in the PPC advertising world. It's easy to ignore them, and you don't know what to change, what levers to pull to grow your account. If you have really terrible profitability, oftentimes you're frozen. You're like, okay, now what do I do? And then you turn to agencies, and that's how this whole space with lots and lots of tools, almost 68 tools and counting, lots and lots of agencies came up because people don't know how to manage their Amazon, how to tame the beast. So yeah, it's a different ballgame altogether now.
So there's 68 tools out there for Amazon sellers to help them in some way manage PPC.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I remember when there was none. And I think Brian Johnson or someone like that had one of the first ones way back when, and that space has completely evolved. So if I'm, like you said, it gets complicated. If I'm a bigger seller, I'm probably going to either have someone on my team dedicated to that, or I'm going to job it out to an agency. But the thing I see with people are always asking me all the time, like, what's a good PPC agency? Who should I be recommending? And there's a ton of them out there. Some are have a better reputation than others. Some, but what I've always found is it's not so much about the agency, is it's about the person that you get at that agency. So I've tried several different agencies, and I could say this one, you should go with this one. I had a great experience, but that's just because I had whoever the employee was or the rep was really good and on top of it. But someone else in that agency might not be as good. Versus I could go to another agency and have a similar experience where maybe I get a bad one. I say that agency's not good. So what do you recommend if I'm an experienced seller and I'm frustrated with my PPC, or maybe I have a current agency that's just not performing the way I want them to do? How would you go about interviewing or tackling that issue of finding the right fit?
Yeah, and I would just throw in one more thing. So it's, the person you get is one thing, but then you also want to interview the process they use, because people are only as good as the processes that they are following. So if an agency is not process oriented, if they don't have SOPs, if the quality of their SOPs is either bad or those SOPs are just not followed, then again, that's another problem. So
how would you know? How would you know that? Would you ask them? Are they going to share those with you?
Yeah, we share all our SOPs. So the two ways to find out. One, get them to do an audit, and that's one really good way of finding out what are the things they're focused on. And what they're likely to be focused on once you give them the account. So that's number one. So we always do an audit for all our agency clients.
Now, what does an audit tell me? So you come in and do it, just to explain this to the audience if that's never done one. Yeah. Someone else is managing my PPC or I'm doing it myself. You come in and audit. What do you tell me?
Yeah, so there's a few different things we do in our audit. Number one, we give you the account level insight, which is at an overall account level, how you're performing. Like people generally know, okay, my ACOS is this, my TACOS is this, my spend is this, and my sales is this. But there's other things that you might be missing out on. For example, what is your conversion rate on the ad side versus conversion rate on the PPC side? There's other things that people don't always see. What is your sales coming from branded searches versus non-branded searches? Or, whether you're using all the different ad types or not. So ad coverage, whether you are using your placement modifiers correctly, whether you're using your bidding strategies correctly or not. Because we go in and find specific examples to show them, where they're using these tools incorrectly. So we'll point out a bunch of them. So we have this checklist. We'll go through that. We'll make our notes, and then we have a one-on-one meeting, and then we share the strategies. After that, even if we don't have a positive outcome in terms of them converting, they will still walk away with something valuable. So that's generally how our PPC audits are structured. And we also do a little bit of a light audit on the retail readiness side of things, because without retail readiness, if someone tells you that you have 2% conversion rate on your unit session percentages and we can do a great job on PPC, I think that's a big lie. And so if an agency doesn't know the difference, if the page isn't converting and you're pushing more money onto that page, and the conversion rate is so poor, you're not going to succeed with PPC. Something that's not working needs to be fixed first. So all these things can be pretty well explained if you are having an audit and you're talking through all the numbers there. So you look at the numbers, you look at the strategies that they think they will use to counter all the flaws that they've noticed. It can't be just a general statement. It has to be like more specific, like what exactly are you going to do? And then you can also look at their SOPs. So we actually have a Trello based SOP system for daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. We have a list of things we check on a regular basis, and we happily share that if they ask for it. If they say, okay, what's your SOP? We'll say, here it is.
So what level should I be looking to job out my PPC? Should I wait till I hit $100,000? Am I a new seller and should I start right away with an agency? What do you recommend that people do when it comes to managing their PPC? Should they learn it in the beginning? Like if you're just starting out and you put in $10,000, should I just kind of try it myself just so I kind of basically understand the jargon, the terminology before I job it out so I can have intelligent conversations with somebody? Or what would be your approach and recommendation for a brand new person? And at what level should they consider switching it over to an expert that does this day in, day out?
Yeah, so I've seen people, on both sides of the spectrum. People who are brand new, who just don't understand where to start. They're like afraid of the whole PPC thing. And we often help them in the early phases, and then we hand the account back to them. So let's say if they just need help understanding, how do I even start? Where do I start? We help with setting up their campaigns and structures and basically teaching them some good best practices right in the beginning of their journey, because they're going to use PPC forever. They're not going to ever drop it. So, it's kind of nice if you are a brand new seller to learn PPC on your own. But if you need help and you need it like yesterday, then you might as well speak to an agency who will do like the initial setup and teach you the basics. Just do it with them for a couple of months and then take a break, see if you can handle it yourself, learn the ropes. And then once it gets, too big to the point that it's affecting your other work, like if it's taking you away from managing the rest of your Amazon account, then definitely at that point start looking out and let someone else manage it. Now, of course, the value has to be there, right? They have to be able to pay for themselves. If they can't pay for themselves at that stage, initially, of course, they won't be able to pay for themselves because you're also not selling. But once you're a mature seller and you want this agency to be able to pay for themselves and be incentivized to grow and give you profits, then at that point, it's probably a good idea to go ahead. The other thing I would also recommend is that if an agency has a software that they're using, then also evaluate the software, because a lot will depend on how the software works. And sometimes the software could basically be doing all the work in terms of like AI or whatever, and the agent or agency is merely setting some parameters there and maybe not working so much on the creative side of things. Because I think that PPC has two aspects. One is the daily, weekly management stuff like bid management, budget management, placement modifier management, bidding strategy management. These are all better suited for software. They're the kinds of things that software can do a lot better than humans because it's volumes and volumes of data. And the other side of PPC, in my opinion, is the creative side of things, things that involve keyword research or competitor research, or finding out which keywords you should be going after, where is the low hanging fruit, like which ad types are going to give you the best results now, what is the earliest you can get on to some sort of beta that Amazon is running. Like right now there's this amazing beta with video ads that not a lot of people have caught on, but I suppose by the end of this episode people would be using that, given how many downloads you guys have. So there's just a lot of those creative things, even thinking through what kind of sponsored brand headline ads we should run, etc., etc. That's, I think, better suited for human work. Like humans can do a lot better on those aspects. And I think anyone who's looking for an agency should try and figure out what is the balance between those two aspects.
So Amazon's become much more of a pay-to-play platform. I mean, I remember back when 2016, when you first started, back then it was about 85% organic sales and maybe 10, 15, maybe 20% PPC. What would you say it is across a lot of your clients now? Has that flipped? What are you seeing as far as the mix and the ratio that a healthy account is maintaining?
Yeah, it hasn't exactly flipped. It is definitely going more towards PPC. But the way I would put it is, if you are a newish seller, let's say between 2 to 3 years on Amazon, I would consider that kind of newish. I think the ratios are more on the side of PPC versus organic. Whereas if you've been in the game for a while, like 8 years, 9 years, and so on, you will see that your organic is still the bulk of your sales. And the reason is because, gaining relevancy for keywords does take time. You can't just make it happen, even with brute force, even with like giveaways, even with lightning deals and so on. It takes a lot of time, a lot of credibility, and Amazon's algorithm needs to pass you as someone who is consistently delivering results. And so you build that credibility over time, and those are the accounts we see with maybe 30 to 40% coming from PPC, and the remaining 60 to 70% coming from organic. All the newer accounts that we're seeing, like 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 70% of their sales would come from PPC and about 30 from organic, because they're still trying to build up their relevancy, and it'll take time.
So that's something that maybe a lot of newer, or like you said, the sellers who've been selling less than 3 years, they may not take into consideration how much is actually they're going to have to spend to get that placement. So I know people always say, what's a good tacos or what's a good ACOS? And that depends. I mean, there's not one set number for everybody. But what is just kind of like a basic rule of thumb that you would say someone at that level should just figure that you just need to maintain? I mean, I know the target for a lot of people is like try to get under 10% tacos. That seems to be like a common just like target threshold, which may or may not make sense in all cases. But what would you say should people be striving for and looking for? And a lot of this has to do with the sourcing too, because you got to source products that have enough margin that you can cover this. And a lot of people forget that. They just look at their landed costs and they totally forget about baking in a number for advertising. What would you say someone, just if they're doing back of the paper math or napkin math, what they should throw in for that number?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I shared a tacos formula recently at Prosper at one of my talks there. What we realized was that initially, when you're just starting out as a new seller, you will notice that your ads will eat into your profits, right? You're basically starting from scratch. You don't have any visibility. You don't have any way of getting people to choose you over your competition. So you have to go heavy on ads. That's kind of the only way you have. But then as you go over time, you will see that, when you start spending more and more on ads, that your relevancy, the keyword relevancy starts to build up, and then your revenue starts to go up as well, right? So it's almost like imagine two vertical axes, and one horizontal. For the horizontal is the ad spend over time, and the left one, let's say, is your profits, and the right vertical axis is revenue, right? Overall total revenue. So what happens is that in the initial phases, your profits curve looks like it's going from high to low, right? Your ads are eating into your profits. Your profits are actually decreasing, but then simultaneously your revenue is increasing, and there is a sweet spot in between where for the right amount of spend you get the right amount of sales. Like any imbalance on that will either cause you to have a higher or lower tacos, right? So the tacos value itself cannot be an absolute number. It has to change with your growth as a seller. It has to be different at different stages of your growth on Amazon. So initially your tacos would be much higher till you get to that sweet spot where actually revenue starts to take off, and at that point you can start to pull back on your tacos targets and start to make it a little bit more conservative, right? As you were saying, 10%. Like 10% is not a number that I can say is the absolute, because I don't think we can give out absolute numbers even after you've calculated your COGS and all that stuff. And your overheads, you will see a variability in your tacos setting, right? So that's something that's going to change over time. So just be aware of that. But then there is a rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is that eventually you want to get to. This is what I normally tell people, is that you want to target at least half of your net margin. So whatever is left at the end of the day, after you've paid off Amazon and your suppliers and everything, your overheads, whatever you're left with, and you want to obviously take something back home as well. So try to target about 50% of that as your tacos goal eventually.
So if your net margin is 30% without advertising in there,
Yes.
then you should bake back in a 15% spend on tacos, and then that would put your net, once you put that column back into the P&L at 15% as your bottom line that you're reinvesting or paying yourself out on, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So if I'm starting out as a new seller and I've got $10,000 to launch my product, I might need to actually either change what I'm launching, or I might need to actually say I need another $10,000 just in PPC because I got to buy my way in. Mm-hmm. Something along those lines. I mean, that's something a lot of people don't think. Or if they have $10,000, they're like, okay, I got $5,000 that may have to be spent on PPC just to get positioning, and the other $5,000 is what I have to actually buy my product and launch it and everything with. So that's a different way of approaching it than what's been done in the past.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to keep money aside for PPC because it is going to be 60 to 70% of your total sales. Like you will have to spend, and most people do spend like 80% ACOS, not tacos, ACOS. So then you can do the math there as well. How much you will be spending and how much you will be gaining at the end of the day. And that could continue for months, even, 6 months, 7 months, till you build relevancy. Now, obviously, how you play the game will also decide the outcomes, right? How you pick your keywords, which niche to go after, whether you've done your competitor research enough, whether you understand what you're going up against, is how fragmented is the market? Is it just being occupied by 2 or 3 leaders? And you can find that out through Product Opportunity Explorer, by the way. You can look up trends and you can see 2 things. You can check price points, average price points for a keyword. And then you can also check, not for a keyword as in how much you pay for a keyword, but average price point of products that are winning that keyword. You can find that out, and you can find out how many competitors are winning that keyword. So those are 2 pieces of information that can tell you how you should go about, planning for the right product and then also the right keywords, because all of this will, in the end, come back all together.
So how is AI, that's the buzzword right now, and since November of last year when ChatGPT 3.5 was actually released, some people started latching onto it, and especially in our space, and let's help it rewrite our listings and analyze reviews and help us with the title. And especially if we're not a native English speaker, it can make a huge difference. But you've taken it to like another level beyond that, and actually are using it with PPC now. And you also, like at the $1 Billion Seller Summit, the presentation that won the whole thing, you shared like 10 ways to actually use AI to actually analyze big data sets of PPC and write that out to a customized Google Doc without really knowing any kind of programming, without having to get a bunch of developers involved or anything. It was mind-blowing. And I know that's just the beginning. It's just, it's going to shoot to the moon on what's happening now with GPT, with ChatGPT 4.0. Can you talk a little bit about how you're seeing AI's impact on everything, but specifically on Amazon sellers and their advertising, and maybe share with us a few insights on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. I mean, around late December, early January, when this thing just blew up and everybody had access to what was, much anticipated, people on their wait lists and stuff like that. I started playing with AI, and I started looking at, what can be done, what can be done with AI. Can we use it for advertising? Because I'd already seen some case studies of people saying, okay, we're analyzing listings, we're analyzing reviews, we're getting more ideas on how to change our product or product descriptions and so on. So there was a lot of those kinds of use cases, because ChatGPT is really good at language models. They really understand words, and it's easy for ChatGPT to process a lot of text and give you summaries, give you alternatives, give you analysis of what's been said. It can also look for patterns across different text pieces and give you the best out of all of that. So I think those use cases are quite well understood now. I guess everybody started using those ideas to optimize their titles and bullet points and so on. Now, obviously, ChatGPT is not perfect, because it will sometimes give you some random responses which you've got to filter out. And then there's this whole idea of like writing the correct prompt so that you get the right sort of response that you're expecting. So yeah, I was just playing with all those things, and then I said, okay, how do I apply this to PPC? Like, how do I get ChatGPT to be my buddy? So I can do more with PPC. And so, I already have like this, kind of affinity for Google Sheets. Like, I already was doing a bunch of stuff with Google Sheets, but this kind of accelerated it even more. So we started experimenting using ChatGPT and Google Sheets together, and kind of use that to exponentially increase our productivity and the outcomes. So yeah, I at BDSS, I'd kind of shared some ideas on how I just told myself, okay, I'm going to create 10 tools in 10 days. The idea being that you can create mini tools, like mini or micro tools, so many of them, for the smallest thing that you want to analyze with your ad data, right? There's reports that Amazon gives you, lots and lots of reports that you can take slices off and say, okay, I want to analyze this part of the data over time. How do I do it, right? So you can use ChatGPT to come up with suggestions on how this data can be utilized. And the way I eventually kind of boiled it down to like four different ways to interact with ChatGPT. I'll share them. So the first one was basically asking ChatGPT directly. Look, for example, I say, okay, here is my product. This is my product description. I want to find keywords that the audience of this product is likely to use in order to search for it. So I'm asking ChatGPT's opinion based on whatever information it has from the World Wide Web up until, I think, September 2021. That's the brain of ChatGPT. And use that to come up with starting points for keywords. That was like one experiment I did early on, and I said, "Wow, this is great because it gives me as many keywords as I want." Now, obviously, you want to pair that up with tools, right, to get the search volume, because just having keywords alone isn't sufficient. So I started pairing that up with Helium 10, because I know that Magnet can give you search volume if you provided a bunch of keywords, like up to 200 keywords can be entered into Magnet, and then it gives you search volume. which is great because that was a perfect kind of pairing of an initial idea with a tool that already existed, and then I just export that information out and use it, to do the next steps. Another way, so this was asking ChatGPT directly in the UI, in the ChatGPT UI. Another thing I started playing with was asking ChatGPT for Google Sheets formulas, which are super useful, but not everybody knows them or remembers them. Like, I'm a heavy Google Sheets user, but if you ask me what's the formula to extract blah, blah, blah out of something else, I'll probably have to Google it myself, right? I'll be like, okay, what was the syntax again? I know it's doable, but I don't remember it, right? So at that point, instead of going through Google as a search engine and then going through Stack Overflow to give you the exact formula and then trying it and so on, all you need to do is tell ChatGPT exactly what you want in your Google Sheet in terms of outcomes. You want to say, I have a sheet A that does this, this, this. It's got this on column A, it's got this on column B, and it's got this on column C. And I want another sheet, which I'm going to name blah, blah, blah. And I want you to tell me how is it doing month over month, something like that. So I asked GPT to give me the formulas to add, and it told me exactly which cells to add what formulas to, which was blowing because my whole productivity was 10x. Like, I didn't have to do any searching, any experimenting. I just used the formulas as is. And sometimes those formulas would work and sometimes they wouldn't. So when they didn't work, I would just throw it back at ChatGPT and say, that didn't work. Give me an alternative. So it says, no problem. And it also apologizes really sweetly. I apologize for the confusion. And then it gives you an alternative. Try this filter formula or try this index array formula, which I would never be able to dream up, even if I spent an hour or two just trying to, figure the formulas out on Google Sheets. Anyway, so that was the second way I started experimenting, and I started creating these micro tools using Google Sheets formulas that did all kinds of things. Then the third way that I interacted with ChatGPT was to say, give me code. And that was the point at which I was like, okay, this is beyond my ability. Like, I don't identify as a programmer, although I know the basics of logic and programming, etc., from my engineering days. But I'm not a programmer. So for me to come up with any kind of code is close to impossible, right? On my own, I can't do it. So I asked ChatGPT to give me Google App Script formula or just give me Google App Script code that I would then insert into Google, and then it would, do whatever it needed to do. And this was amazing because it literally spits out the code, and then you copy the code and you put it as as part of your Google Sheets extension. You just say app script and you drop the code in there, and then you're off to the races. Now, it will also have, just like any programming softwares, it will throw errors, right? There will be things that you need to debug, just like bulk files on Amazon, right? Often you get errors, then you need to debug them. And so what I was doing was I was just copying the error messages and throwing it back into ChatGPT as is without saying anything. And then it would say, oh, I apologize. This error is because of blah, blah, blah. Let me give you another piece of code. So it would give me another piece of code or fix something in my previous code. And I was able to create a bunch of really cool, PPC tools just using the suggestions that ChatGPT threw up for the app script code. In between, it was also giving me Python, which I was like, okay, should I do it in Python? Should I do it in Google Apps Script? Okay, let's just try Python. So I also downloaded Python and ran it on my local machine, and I was able to get good results with that as well. So it's interesting that ChatGPT can take a few instructions and then turn that into something that you can use right away. You can create mini tools, micro tools, so many of them. Sky's the limit. I created 10 tools in 10 days, and I kept going. I'm like, okay, I'm going to create more tools. I have a bunch of them now. So that was the third way I was interacting with ChatGPT. And the fourth way is basically to integrate it right into Google Sheets. So for this, basically you need to get a little bit of help, which our developer was able to help us. So with a little bit of help, you can get the formulas working within Google Sheets, so that if you put in a prompt, you will get a response in another cell. And you can basically drag down the formula across all the rows and do this at scale. That was amazing, because then I was like, okay, let's say if I want to create 1,000 sponsored brand headline ads today for these 1,000 keywords, can I do it? And boom, it's easy. Like in a matter of minutes, I had 1,000 sponsored brand headline ads that can just be used right away, with some tweaks maybe, because sometimes it doesn't obey your command. Like I keep saying, don't use exclamation marks, but it still slips in some exclamation marks. But anyway, you get the idea. So there's four different ways in which I was able to evolve myself and also use ChatGPT in more and more advanced ways. So now we've just adopted it as the thing we do. Like we just go to the sheet and just put in a prompt, and then it gives you a reply, and it stays there. The whole sheet, the whole team can use it, and so on. It's pretty cool.
What differences are you seeing? And a lot of this that you did for like the BDSS was in ChatGPT 3.5, but since then 4.0's come out, and you've started dabbling in that. Are you seeing a big difference, or any differences at all in that?
Yeah, I think ChatGPT 4 or GPT-4, which is the backend that is integrated with our Google Sheets solution, is a little more advanced, actually quite a lot more advanced. It's still in the text format, but I believe more is coming. Like, I believe you will be able to now upload images and things like that and interact with GPT, provided there are some interfaces that take it. So I'm just playing with the text version of it right now. So there are some changes, and I can explain a few of them. So for example, there's one new addition where you can set the persona of the person you think ChatGPT should be when answering the question. So it's from the perspective of who. For example, you can say, you are a helpful assistant, or you are an engineer, or you are a model, or whatever. From that person's perspective, answer this question. So that makes a whole lot of difference, because then it's more kind of catered to the kind of response you're hoping for. That's one. Persona is new in ChatGPT 4. Then there is this thing called facts. Earlier, we didn't have facts. Facts basically is you giving ChatGPT, you know, um, actual facts that it should use, because it doesn't know everything. Like it does not always understand, and it can get mixed up with facts versus interpretation. So you can actually give it some specific facts, and that'll help give you a much better response. Another one is temperature, which has been around since ChatGPT 3.5. So temperature is basically trying to moderate the output creativity level, which means how random can it be, or how deterministic can it be. So the more creative you want the responses, the higher you set the temperature. The lower you want the creativity level, and you just want like deterministic responses with nothing deviating, then you can set the temperature to a lower value. And then finally, another kind of change, which I think was kind of cool, was it's called top P, which is something called nucleus sampling. And this is basically the idea that if you say, I want my top P variable to be, let's say, 0.1, it means that the responses that ChatGPT will consider is only 10% of the probability, which means they're highly catered to giving you a response that is most likely to be true. So there's that. I mean, top P and temperature can be used alternatively. You either use one or the other. But basically, the idea is how deterministic do you want the response to be versus how creative. And I know that people right now are testing the limits of ChatGPT by giving it like crazy prompts and wanting crazy answers as well. But yeah, you can control some of those parameters by setting these variables, especially if you're doing it through a Google Sheets integration. You can have a separate sheet just telling you what these values are, or telling ChatGPT what these values are, so that it picks those up and then applies it to your prompts. So yeah, there's a lot. Like, it's still evolving, but there's so much to learn and so much to fine tune.
Is this something that e-commerce sellers, Amazon sellers, should be paying attention to, whether it's doing what you're doing on the PPC, or just should they get their head wrapped around this whole AI? Is it going to make that big of an impact in the way they run their businesses in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say embrace it. Like, I know there's a little bit of skepticism of AI taking over jobs and the world and all that stuff. I would say the more you can familiarize yourself with what the possibilities are, the better it would be for you and your teams to kind of take advantage of it, leverage it. To improve your business in so many different ways, right? There's productivity you can improve. You can also go over to the visual side of things with Midjourney, which is like this visual interface that Amy Weiss talks about, and she did in her BDSS talk as well. Really cool stuff with creating package design, or creating just layouts, and just amazing product design, even with just a few instructions, and merging of concepts that you never thought were possible before, like almost imaginary, and almost like whimsical in a sense. Like, she designed like this new style of garlic press, just as an example, which I thought was pretty cool. But you can use it for so many different creative ways. So I would say, I mean, you don't have to have FOMO or anything, but just try to just warm up to the idea that this is a thing that will take the world, over, and in some form or the other, it is going to touch your lives, So I would encourage people to embrace it, and learn it, so they know what they're up against, or it might be something that really helps you in your business.
Well, before we wrap up, I just have two quick questions for you, just to leave everybody with two quick pieces of advice when it comes to PPC on Amazon. What is a common mistake that you see a lot of people making that they need to address? And what's something that you see that a lot of people are missing out on an opportunity on PPC that they should dive deeper into?
Yeah, so when we do audits, we've done hundreds and hundreds of audits, and this is a common theme. There will be campaigns that are doing extremely well in terms of really good ACOS, and they're delivering results and so on, but their budgets will be capped. That's so common that I almost want to say, hey guys, go back home today and check if that's happening to you. It's easy to find this out. Like, just go to your campaigns manager, look for, just put filters, two filters. All you need is two filters. One, ACOS is less than, let's say, 10% or 15%, which means your ACOS is really good. And set budget filter to less than 20 or 25 or 30, something like that. And you'll see a bunch of campaigns. I bet you will. A bunch of campaigns that you could instantly increase the budgets on, and let the flow of money come to you, because these are like printing machines, right? These are your best campaigns, but you might be capping them for reasons that are not sure. I'm not sure why people cap their budgets when something is doing great, because it's likely to give you a much better ROI. So yeah, anyway, that's one kind of common mistake that I see all the time. The second one you said was an opportunity, right? So in terms of opportunities, I see people only focusing on sponsored product keyword based ads. Like, that's the majority of the focus. And I know why that is, because most of the knowledge that's out there, the teachers, the gurus, and the software providers in the space only talk about keyword ranking. Like that's the major focus of PPC. When you say PPC, you're talking about keywords in some way or the other, right? Now, those are important for sure. Like, don't get me wrong, that's very, very important. And you definitely need to have a solid strategy for keyword ranking. However, don't do it at the expense of ignoring everything else that Amazon has given us in terms of low-hanging fruit that other people aren't focused on, like sponsored brand ads, sponsored brand video ads, sponsored display, certain types of sponsored display ads for product targeting and remarketing. If you are a brand that has a repeat purchase rate, then you should be doing remarketing ads. It's such a waste to have people come to your page and so there's two types of remarketing: views remarketing and purchase remarketing. So if someone's come to your page and has not purchased, or someone's gone to a competitor's page and has not purchased, well, those guys are ready. They're just probably busy. They got distracted by something else. You can bring those people back because they're almost there, right? You want to bring them back. So that's an ad type I see people don't use much. And then with sponsored brand headline, I still don't understand why people don't use that tool effectively. They think it's more expensive, or they think this is for brand building. That's not true. I use sponsored brands all the time for bottom of funnel conversions. It all depends on what kind of keywords you pick for sponsored brand ads. Like if you take long tail keywords and let's say you match it very closely to the headline you've picked for your sponsored brand ad, boom, you can have conversions just with that, so don't miss out on the most valuable real estate on the search results page, which is right up at the top.
Awesome advice, Ritu. As usual, if people want to learn more about you, or reach out to you, or find out more about PPC Ninja, or how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so you can follow me on LinkedIn. So I'm my full name Ritu Java, Ritu Java. You can also look up our website ppcninja.com. And we have an awesome blog. We also offer a free mastermind program, 4 weeks, that they can enroll in for free. And we just keep repeating it. So we are on to our 30th mastermind, I believe, coming up shortly here in April. And then we just keep doing them. As soon as one finishes, we give it a break and then we start again. So you get to hang out with awesome sellers across the world. And that way you can kind of learn more about our software and our agency and our content. And we can grow together. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today. This has been great information, and can't wait till I see you the next time, either at an event or maybe, who knows, speaking at BDSS again.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Kevin, and really look forward to the next time. So yeah, have a good one.
Thank you. No doubt Ritu is one of the smartest people in our space when it comes to PPC and advertising on Amazon. She's always got some great stuff to share. And in fact, that free mastermind class that she was mentioning, I just may have to go check that out myself. Probably will learn a few things in that as well. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode and got some good value from it. We'll be back again next week. But before we go, I've got some words of wisdom for you. The person who gets one shot needs everything to go right. But the person who gets 1,000 shots is going to score at some point. So in business, find a way to play the game that ensures you get lots of shots. Again, the person who gets one shot needs everything to go right. But the person who gets 1,000 shots is going to inevitably score at some point. Find a way to play the game that ensures you get lots of shots. We'll see you again next week.